only thing we have to fear is
In war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Thomas Jefferson said, "The constitutions of most of our states and of the United States assert that all power is inherent in the people, that they may exercise it by themselves, that is their right and duty, to be at all times armed, and that they are entitled to freedom of person, freedom of religion, freedom of property, and freedom of press."
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. It's WallBuilders Live with David Barton and Rick Green, and today's Foundations of Freedom Thursday. So we're going to be diving into your questions on the principles of our nation and how our system works. Constitution and Declaration questions, whatever you got, send them our way. radio@wallbuilders.com. That's radio@wallbuilders.com. And, David, we love getting the questions. I know you've got a stack of them there that we've been sent, and we can't get to all of them today, but we're going to try to cover as many as we can.
I've got this thing in front of me, and it just struck me, and so let me take time out and read this. So here we go. These are some questions and answers. All right, here's the first question.
Oh, good. So you actually have the answers. You're not setting me up for one of these tests. You're not asking me questions. But
you don't have to answer this one. This is just simple question and answer. I'll even give you the answers.
I like this test. Okay, I'm ready.
Question: Can you tell me who made you? Answer: The great God who made heaven and earth. Question: What doth God do for you? Answer: He keeps me from harm by night and by day, and is always doing me good. Question: What must you do for this great God who is so good to you? Answer: I must learn to know him first, and then I must do everything to please him. Question: Where does God teach us to know him and to please him? Answer: In this holy word, which is contained in the Bible. Question: Have you learned to know who God is? Answer: God is a spirit, and though we cannot see him, yet he sees and knows all things, and he can do all things. Question: What must you do to please God? Answer: I must do my duty toward both God and toward man. Now it keeps going. Okay, you got the tone of this, right?
Yeah.
Who's that written for?
Well, it sounds like a good catechism, I would think, for young people, but I can't, in terms of when? You asking me when?
Well, just anything you could tell me from what you just heard there, because you know where we are today. So,
yeah.
I mean, how does it strike you?
Well, I doubt it's being used in public schools today.
Yeah, I think you're safe there.
So, man, Sunday school class.
No, it was a school book. It was for 3-year-olds.
Wow.
That was the questions you asked.
Well, when I said young people, I was thinking, elementary maybe, middle school.
Yeah, so you're thinking 10, 11, 12. Now, this is a 3-year-old catechism.
Wow.
And this is what we were teaching in 1792 in America, at least the edition we have is 1792. And so you got these questions being asked of 3-year-olds, which is why when signer of the Declaration John Witherspoon was 4 years old, he had already finished reading through the King James Bible from cover to cover for the first time. And that's why when Founding Father John Trumbull was 4 years old, he'd already finished reading the King James Bible from cover to cover for the first time. And I say that because I was just listening to that really super young voice we had on the opening, reading all that constitutional quote. It was great stuff. And I thought, man, that's young. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's not so young after all. And I pulled this book out real quick, and I just think we way underestimate what our kids can do.
Yeah.
I mean, you look back to that 1792 book, and these are the questions. I don't know how many adults would even want to attempt to answer those 3-year-old questions.
Right.
But, okay, so back to where we were, Foundations of Freedom Thursday. Sorry, little caveat there.
No, it's great because I think that we do need to know that even, not only the biblical, but the constitutional as well. These are things that This information needs to be taught at those young ages.
Well, do you remember the Stansbury's Catechism on the Constitution for elementary students?
Yeah.
You know, those is the same kind of catechism questions, but it was on the Constitution. And we started our kids off really, really young with this stuff. It'd be really nice if we could get Supreme Court justices to read a catechism on the Constitution today.
No kidding.
But this was elementary stuff back in the day. So, you know, here we are on Thursday trying to address some questions that at least have peripheral connection to Constitution somewhere or the other. But man, we used to start really, really young with this stuff.
Well, we need to do it again. So, but we'll start with us old folks here on the program. But that's, you know, actually encourage families to listen to the program together. And I have families come up to all the time at events where we go speak and say, you know, we listen together as a family. I think that's a great way to do it and get the young people involved in learning as well. Going to take a quick break and we'll get to our first question today. It's going to be about Republicans and Democrats and our party system here in America. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live.
Thomas Jefferson said, "In questions of power, then let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down for mischief by the chains of the Constitution."
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. As Christians become more active in politics, they must remember to elevate principles above party loyalty. Perhaps the best illustration of this comes from the life of Founding Father Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence who served in the presidential administrations of John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, each of whom was from a different political party. When Benjamin Rush was asked of his personal party affiliation, he responded, "I've been alternately called an aristocrat and a Democrat. I am neither. I am a Christocrat. I believe all power will fail of producing order and happiness in the hands of man. He alone who created and redeemed man is qualified to govern him." Like Benjamin Rush, we too must remain Christocrats regardless of our personal party affiliation.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom
Thomas Jefferson said, "The Constitution of most of our states and of the United States assert that all power is inherent in the people, that they may exercise it by themselves, that it is their right and duty to be at all times armed, that they are entitled to freedom of person, freedom of religion, freedom of property, and freedom of press."
Welcome back. This is WallBuilders Live. It's Foundations of Freedom Thursday, and we're going to dive into some of your questions. First one today is from Marcus. It says, "There's nothing in the Constitution about Republicans and Democrats, is there? How did U.S. politics become a two-party system? Since people register to vote as Democrat or Republican, is there a way for a third party, maybe a Tea Party, to emerge?" All right, David, so political parties.
Political parties. I'm going to go back to another old school book. We were just talking about one. This is an 1843 government book. It's a really cool book. There's so much good stuff in this, but it's called The Young American, or Book of Government and Law. So this is what you had in school to learn about government. I want to read you what it says about political parties. Remember, this is 1843. At that point in time, you had a Democrat Party. You did not have a Republican Party. And here's what it says. It says, "Political parties have existed in all free governments. They spring from the different views which different persons take of great questions affecting the public interest. Persons entertaining the same views will associate together and act together to carry the measures they approve and to defeat those they condemn. Other persons entertaining opposite views will also associate together to counteract the operations of the first party thus formed." Okay, so what you've got is, in all free governments, you're going to have people who oppose and people who support particular policies and particular beliefs. So those people get together and say, hey, we want this thing done with agriculture, or we want this thing done with fishing, or we want this thing done with education. And as people get together and say, that's my belief too, they will start organizing to make that into policy. And now that's what it takes to form a political party. You have certain things you want operate into policy. But when you do that, you also have people on the other side who said, no, that's not the right way to do it. And so they will take an opposite position and they will oppose that policy. And that's all it takes to have political parties. Now, notice that it said they've existed in all free governments. The first time we have a free government at a national level is under the U.S. Constitution, 1789. We'd been free states, but we'd never been a free national government. And so you'll find that at that time in 1789, within 2 to 3 years, we had the first political parties formed. You have folks in George Washington's own administration who have very clear views. You have John Adams and Alexander Hamilton who think the federal government should be strong and powerful and get involved in a lot of things. And you have people like Edmund Randolph, and you've got folks like Thomas Jefferson who said, no, the federal government shouldn't be involved, should be states. Well, that became the first two political parties, the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. The Anti-Federalists led by Jefferson, the Federalists led by John Adams. They had their agendas and what they wanted to do and policies they wanted to move forward. And so as things change across time or issues come up and go down, there are other parties that form. You had the Anti-Masonic Party that formed. You had the Democrat-Republicans. You had the Democrats. You actually, under Jefferson, had the Republicans, those who supported a Republican form of government as opposed to a more centralized form. So that was still the Anti-Federalists. But then you got into what were called the Free Soilers, and you got the Emancipationists, and you got the Whigs, and you had all these different parties because issues would change over time. There was a period of 10 to 15 years where the Masonic issue was a national issue. So you had a national party because they had positions on it. Then you move into the period of slavery and emancipation and anti-slavery. And so here come the Emancipationists and the Free Soilers and other parties. So parties always exist. Now, here's the next thing the textbook says that's really important to understand. It says, now they've already said, you're always going to have in free governments people who take opposite views, and they'll organize for their advancement of those views. It says, thus, one party always begets another. And that's because you got two sides. Some people want it, some don't. And as ambitious individuals are apt to put themselves at the head of these several parties and excite them against each other, there is usually a good deal of bitterness between them. It has often happened that persons have become so devoted to party as to forget their country, and in some instances patriotism has been swallowed up in party spirit. Now that's George Washington's farewell address, because Washington and his administration saw the formation of those two political parties, and when he got to the end of his 2 terms, he reminds America, he said, do not have what he called the spirit of party. Don't love a party more than you love principles. He said that is the bane of every free government when you start loving parties more than principles. And so that's the way parties have always operated. So
he wasn't saying don't have parties.
Oh, no.
He was saying don't get so devoted to the party that you put the party over principle or the party over what's good for the country,
no,
right?
That's exactly. And as long as you've got beliefs, you will have parties. You cannot avoid that. Right now, we have a common core party and an anti-common core party.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a pro-global warming party and an anti-global warming party. Right now, we have a secularist party and a theistic party. I mean, you take any issue that's out. We got a pro-conscience party and an anti-conscience party. Anything where people have opposite views and opinions, they will organize themselves to make that into policy. That's a party. That's all it takes to be a party. So the question about Tea Party and third parties, good question. We'll get that in just a bit.
All right, going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on parties here on WallBuilders Live.
Abraham Lincoln said, "We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution."
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Christians have always believed that the greatest life-changing experience available to any individual is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and the testimonies of numerous converts confirm the dramatic changes which often accompany salvation. One such testimony of change comes from founding father Noah Webster, who explained, "I was led by a spontaneous impulse to repentance, prayer, and entire submission and surrender of myself to my Maker and Redeemer. I now began to understand and relish many parts of the Scriptures which before appeared mysterious and unintelligible. In short, my view of the Scriptures, of religion, of the whole Christian scheme of salvation, and of God's moral government are very much changed. The power of God to change a life yielded to Him was just as evident at the time of the Founding Fathers as it still is today.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
George Washington. The Constitution approaches nearer to perfection than any other government hitherto instituted among men.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live, Foundations of Freedom Thursday. Our question we're covering right now has to do with political parties. The guy that sent in the question actually said, it's not in the Constitution, so where'd it come from? So we give him a little background on how people have just come together to fight for things that they believe in. And David, you were quoting from Washington's farewell address and his warning to the country about not becoming too party-oriented over being principle-oriented. And I remember he had a deal in there about it distracting the public councils and making public administration feeble, where he was basically saying, look, if you put people in office that are so party-oriented, they're only going to do what's best for the party, then they don't do a good job of actually just being a good public servant. So it's that same kind of thing. I mean, whether you're working towards getting in office or working on getting people elected, or you're already there, you still got to put principle above party.
Let me take you back to what George Washington said. I'm just going to read to you right out of his farewell address. He says, I've already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding of them on geographical discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its roots in the strongest passion of the human mind. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed, but in those of the popular form, which is ours, which is the elective form where the people rule, he says, in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness and is truly their worst enemy. Now, not party, but the spirit of party. He said the alternate domination of one faction or one party over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetuated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more or less fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. Now, he goes through and keeps talking about how that parties will seek revenge after one another, and one of them says, well, you did this to me. And he talks about how it really sets up individuals to take power.
Yeah, it sounds like he's there at the end that he's warning against basic tyranny, that it sets up a formula for one person to then put their will on everybody.
He's warning against basic tyranny, and it's a tyranny we often see today. I mean, when you get into situations, you can look at different party systems, whether it's in New York State or whether it's in Chicago or whether it's in California or whether it's anywhere else, you see parties become the issue. And see, this is what I challenge people. People say they're Republicans or Democrats or whatever they are. Okay, average Democrat, tell me 20 things your party stands for. Well, Democrats stand for whatever, but what do you believe? And Republicans, tell me 20 things your party stands for. Well, yeah, they can't tell me. And by the way, both parties, you have a platform. And that platform lists probably 200 to 300 things that your party is trying to achieve. So you're voting for your party, and they stand for 200 to 300 things, and you can't tell me 10% of what your party stands for? See, that's the spirit of party. I'm out there to support the spirit of party. It's my party. And when you do that, you lose control of what's right and wrong. And that's a real problem we have. And now we see that revenge going where that, the Democrats have had it for a while. And so if the Republicans get the Senate, they're going to show the president what. And Art, if you want to show the president on the basis of principles, go for it. But to say that the Democrats did this to us and they took the filibuster away with it, wait till we get control, we'll show them what it's like to have no filibuster. That kind of revenge stuff is always bad for the nation, and it always elevates somebody within the party to give them way too much power. And so that's what Washington warns about. So the concept of, all right, where do we go with a Tea Party or a third party? What have they done? There's some pretty good guidance on that as well, and we can get that in just a second.
All right, quick break. We'll come back and talk about the future and what to do about parties. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live.
President Thomas Jefferson said, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society, but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power."
Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution, but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall, in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty in Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
President Calvin Coolidge said, "The more I study the Constitution, the more I realize that no other document devised by the hand of man has brought so much progress and happiness to humanity. To live under the American Constitution is the greatest political privilege that was ever accorded to the human race."
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live, Foundations of Freedom Thursday today. And by the way, you can get more Foundations of Freedom Thursdays on our website in the archive section, going back several months, and give you an opportunity to learn more and more about the Constitution and the Declaration and our principles and the founding of the country. And David, today we've been talking about parties. The question from the audience had to do with, are they good or bad for us? And should we be starting new parties right now with regard to the Tea Party and that sort of thing? Or should the Tea Party become a actual political party? So what do you think? I mean, do you use the vehicles that are out there? Are the parties, I mean, aren't they just us? It's the people that are involved at the time.
You remember that parties are formed around, if you will, worldviews, things that you want to accomplish, things you agree with, things you believe with. Well, that's only part of it. Once you do that, the question is, how do you make that into policy? And to make that into policy involves process. And in the case of the United States, we have a constitution that stipulates process. You're going to have to go through the House, you're going to have to go through the Senate, and you're going to have to get the president to sign it. So if you have a party that wants that done, you've got to work through that. If you're at a state level, you've got to work through the House and Senate, the governor. If you're at a local level, you're going to have to work through city council and mayor. So you have to work through the process. Now, in the case of the United States, we have a committee process in addition to the House and Senate. So you're going to have to work through the committee process. So by the time you see how the process works, you're only going to really be a political party if you're willing to engage in the process. Most third parties are not. In the last election, we had a total of 17 third parties that had representation on the ballot somewhere across the United States. And the thing I've always told people about parties, Tea Party, any other party, it doesn't matter whether it's the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, the Conservative Party, all the parties that are out there, the Green Party, the Reform Party, you name it, you will not have any type of success in getting your agenda moved forward until you're willing to invest in the process at the lowest levels. And until the Tea Party starts running school board candidates and city council candidates and mayor candidates and starts building a farm team from which they become state rep candidates and state senate candidates and governor candidates, you will not change it from the top down. The great example is Teddy Roosevelt, a very popular president of the United States, became ticked at the Republican Party, and this incumbent sitting president starts the Bull Moose Party, his own party, but that's all right. He's an incumbent. He's got the power of all the stuff behind him. He's got the media. He's got everything, and he gets 23% of the national vote. It's because you don't have the process behind you. So to step in as a third party just because you have ideas, that's not what it takes. You have to be able to turn that into policy somehow, and that's where it's a much more complicated process. So, and by the way, the only exception to this really is the formation of the Republican Party. But most parties, it's going to take you a number of years to get there. The Republican Party was birthed very quickly because several other third parties morphed into the Republican Party. They were born over the issue of civil rights. I think there were 11 planks or 9 planks in their first platform, and 7 of the 9 dealt with ending slavery, giving equality, giving civil rights, etc. Well, that was the Free Soilers, the Emancipationists, the anti-slavery Democrats. They all came together. So they already had a process together. But that's the fastest birth of a party that's become a major party. Any other party has had to work its way up through the system and create ideas and followings and groundswells. And if the Tea Party is willing to invest 10, 20, 30 years to do that, they will be a formidable party. If they're not willing to do that, then go take over the Democrat Party or go take over the Republican Party. It is easier to take over an existing party than it is to start a new one. All you have to do is show up with more numbers than they are, and party involvement on all parties is very, very low. They're easy to take over.
Yeah, the car's already built, the engine's there. Just get behind the wheel.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's what it takes.
Absolutely. All right, well, good stuff. Thanks for the questions out there, folks. You can send your questions into radio@wallbuilders.com. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
Thomas Jefferson said, "In questions of power, then let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down for mischief by the chains of the Constitution."
We stand under